Welcome to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I am your host, Chad Hufford, and this is the podcast where we celebrate the unsung heroes of the working world. Each week, we dive into the incredible stories of honest, hardworking folks who have found financial success through grit, determination, and good old-fashioned elbow grease. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn how to turn your hard work into your own success story, you're in the right place. This is the Blue Collar Millionaire Show.
Welcome to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I'm Greg, and I'm with Chad Hufford today. Chad's the real host. I'm just a host in disguise because I have questions. So anyways, Chad, I had a question for you today. Actually, it was a question that came from a friend. He said, how many people come to you guys and don't have any idea what an investment is? So, and I think sometimes people have the wrong idea of what an investment actually is. Is buying a car an investment? Is my house an investment? What is an investment?
Well, you'd mentioned off air, you kind of laughingly said, I feel like sometimes my house is more of a liability than investment because at this point, your house only costs you money.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct?
Yep.
And I mean, you've got 2 kids. I've got 6. The more kids you put in that house, the more the house costs you. Because I don't know about you, but like my kids, if they have to use the bathroom, will turn on every light upstairs. And when I say kids, my wife also. So like nobody will be upstairs. There'll be 9 lights on up there. So it's costing you not just from a repair standpoint, but taxes, maintenance. Like even if you have a paid off house, I just paid my property taxes, the second installment earlier this week.
Mm-hmm.
And so thousands of dollars of property taxes, but I got a free dump run to go with it. So yeah. So yeah,
that's really nice.
So what is an investment? And I think you're right. So a house, even though it can grow in value, is at best a forced savings plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because it forces you to, if you're paying on a mortgage, it forces you to gradually build up equity.
Sure.
Which is, even if it's not producing anything right now, is something you could draw off in the future. You could rent it out. You could sell that house and reinvest it. But I think it is very simplest core. An investment has to actually produce an income.
Interesting.
So Dave Ramsey talks about, if it has a motor and or wheels, it's not an investment. And I know a lot of our blue collar men and women are not going to like this. But no, your side by side is not an investment. Your boat is not an investment.
But I can use that, Chad, to go get a moose.
And moose or one of our guys, one of our oil field guys, he actually lives down in the Kenai, and I love it. He's like, fish and wild game are the most expensive forms of free food. That's the most expensive free food that you can ever get. But gosh, it sure is fun.
Yeah, it is. It's a good time.
But, and say even guns, not an investment. Can you make money off these things? You can. But they're not an investment because they don't produce anything. So the only way for, let's say, you find this unique old classic car and you build it up, it doesn't produce anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if you restore that car, the only way for you to make money on that car is for you to sell it for more than you purchased it for, plus all your time and labor and things like that. You find an old antique gun, same thing. We have a lot of people, usually men, not always, but a lot of the folks we work with, they don't try to sell to us. They try to sell to their spouse. Like, no, this is an investment, But I had one guy who actually found a collection of old pre-1964 Winchester Model 70s, and including some very rare calibers. He talked about an investment. I'm like, but we both know you're never going to sell these things,
right?
So it's not an investment,
right?
Because it doesn't actually create an income. And that's the beauty of owning companies through mutual funds or real estate, is you don't actually have to sell the thing. It can fluctuate in value, which we all know. We've seen that a lot the last few weeks in mutual funds, equity mutual funds that actually own companies. And you, therefore, become the owner or part owner of those companies as well. But the price can fluctuate wildly of the value of the company. That's only if you sell it, which we both encourage people not worry so much about that because you're not going to sell it, at least not anytime soon. But for some folks, if they build up enough of those shares, they don't ever have to sell them. They live off of the earnings, the capital gains, the dividends that those things produce. And same thing if you have a rental property. You don't have to sell a fourplex in order to make money. You rent it out. Mm-hmm. So it actually produces income. Sorry, you had a question.
Well, okay. So, and I know that I'm prompting you to kind of maybe beat a dead horse a little bit, but one of a pushback that I would often get is, yeah, but my vehicle gets me to work. And so therefore I can justify buying a brand new F-250, Super Duty, Platinum, 4-door, of course.
A bicycle would also get somebody to work.
Right.
And we can't justify those decisions either. Like, you need groceries to survive, but a bag of oatmeal is not an investment. So maybe we look at a vehicle as a necessary evil. And I mean, there's plenty of people that can operate even without a vehicle. I mean, shoot, you could do Uber. That would be expensive, but you could work from home, some people. So, I mean, a vehicle might be a necessary cost. Again, just like some of those things we talked about. Yeah, you've got to keep your house heated. Your gas bill is not an investment.
Right.
It's just a necessary cost to live life that way.
I had a client that had enough new vehicles, several new vehicles, where I showed them that the price of an Uber for the next 6 years would be cheaper than the vehicles.
Well, I just saw something come out recently. They were talking about like the average vehicle payment was over $700 now in the United States. And the thing that's different about vehicles too, not only does the vehicle cost you money because you got to put gas in it, you got to repair it. I've got one vehicle in the shop right now. I'm dropping off another one tomorrow morning. Pretty sure they're going to charge me for both of those.
Yeah.
It's only going to cost me money, but just think of like vehicle payments and don't worry, Dave Ramsey, you're listening. Both of these vehicles are paid off. With the vehicle payments, any vehicle, paid off vehicle still costs you money. It's not an investment. It's a liability. You look at that, an average vehicle payment, $700 a month. It's actually more than that. I think it's 707, 709, according to this survey. But you could more than max out a Roth every single year. And just think about doing that. Somebody 21 years old doing that every single year for the next 40 years. They would have potentially millions of tax-free dollars by the time they were ready to retire just from foregoing a vehicle payment. And that's the thing with vehicle payments. Vehicles gradually break down. It isn't like a house where you pay it off and like, okay, now you can live mortgage-free. The tendency is for people to keep trading that vehicle in and they restart that debt cycle over and over and over again. This is obviously a lot bigger than just vehicles, though. I mean, it's you ask me, what is an investment? Just because you can make money off something doesn't make an investment. So that means like gold and Bitcoin or any type of cryptocurrency, you can make money off those things, but only by buying at a lower price and then selling at a higher price, which seems obvious, but pretty hard to do in practice because you have to gamble and get it right twice, being able to buy at the right price and then sell at the right price.
I had somebody that had mentioned to me, he said, hey, I looked at one of those gold companies that I hear on AM radio. And he said, I didn't realize that they sell the gold above market price and then they buy the gold at below market price. So when I try to sell it back to them, it's a lot harder to.
Well, in that case, like the person selling the gold, they don't need the price has to do anything. If they make money off the spread. So if they sell you the gold and the gold drops in price, no skin off their back, they made money. And there's a lot of fear mongering, I think, going on right now about that. On the other side of that, so gold is, I think, more of a fear-based thing. I think a lot of your cryptocurrencies or some other investments might be, the next hot thing that people are trying to get into. But again, at the end of the day, you're a price speculator. It's not a true investment because it doesn't produce anything.
Okay, so when is it okay to buy a fourplex then? Lots of people come in, they say, hey, I'm going to buy a fourplex. When is that an okay time?
Well, I don't want to get us too far into the weeds, but I mean, and let's just go broader. Any piece of rental property technically I think is a legitimate investment because you own something that produces income.
Sure.
Doesn't mean it's a good one though.
Correct.
And that's where we need. So, none of us are real estate experts, but people need to really know their numbers, because a lot of the folks that come in here own real estate where the numbers don't make sense. I had a guy, this is a few months ago, beginning of summer, and he was talking about, he had about $3 million in real estate and owed a little less than $2 million. So about $1 million in equity outside of his house. These were just income properties. And I was asking some of the numbers, and he's like, well, I'm not sure. He's like, well, at least they cash flow. And I remember thinking, like, you have $1 million in equity. It better cash flow.
Right.
Like, that shouldn't be the standard. Just because it cash flows, therefore it's a good investment. Now, it checks that box that it does produce an income, but you really have to look and see what is the internal rate of return on that property. A lot of folks have no idea, especially when you consider vacancies and repairs and taxes and all that. A lot of real estate aren't great investments, but at least they are producing something. And kind of like your house, it's a forced savings plan with some investment attached to it. But there's also potentially a lot of risk. And yes, if you're wanting to get into real estate, you will have to be more patient if you're doing it with cash. There's a lot less risk. Again, doesn't mean you can't make money by leveraging property and all that, but did some research recently, and 100% of the houses that were foreclosed on had a mortgage. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, I mean, debt can be an accelerant when it comes to real estate, in the sense that it amplifies whatever decision you make. So if you're on an icy road driving a non-roadworthy vehicle and you start accelerating, it potentiates the problems you're going to have.
Sure.
Debt can do the same thing. So if you have a piece of property that might not be a great investment, even if it is a good investment, but it exaggerates any risks along the way. So you might get your goal faster, but also increases the chances of you not getting there at all. Just like, if you're going to go from point A to point B, following the speed limit, great. If you go 100 miles an hour, you might get there faster, but you might wrap yourself around a telephone pole on the way.
Gotcha. So my last question about investing is you're saying investing is something that has to produce money, or produce.
It has to produce an income. You shouldn't have to sell it away in order for it to produce something. And that's the beauty, again, of real estate and owning companies to mutual funds, is over time, especially if you have a variety of diversified portfolio of things that you own.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about this more another time, being an owner versus a loaner. You want to own companies, not lend to them. But when you are owning that, yes, the price can increase. That's great. We want that. But while you own it, before you sell it, or even if you never do, companies still have earnings. They produce income and profits. And as a part owner in that, through your mutual fund, you get to share in some of that without ever having to sell those shares.
What do you say to the guy that sees they own these mutual funds, it goes down, and now it's feeling like a liability?
Well, it definitely can feel painful. And I think part of it is, for people, it's that shame of feeling like, I should have known this had happened. The problem is, it's really easy to invest in hindsight. It's really easy to gamble in hindsight. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you know who wins the Super Bowl, it'd be really easy to go back in time. To just think of the Back to the Future movie. It might be a little bit before your time, with the flux capacitor and all that. And he goes back in time and he buys a sports book and starts betting on all these things. Or he doesn't. One of the characters in the movie. But in the moment, you don't know where that thing's going to end up. And you can feel stupid. Like, I should have seen this coming. And then we have this hindsight bias, where when you see how things have played out, when you essentially have the almanac showing what's happened, it's really easy to connect the dots. When you're in the midst of it, it's a lot less obvious. So when you're going through a time, there might be reasons why the market might go down temporarily, but it usually doesn't. the broad market, the companies in America, public companies in America, as an aggregate whole, are up about 3 years in every 4. So betting on them going down is almost always a losing game, or at least the odds are heavily against you. But when it does happen, and somebody who's been investing for a long time, it's happened to them a lot, it can feel very painful. Again, let's just use real estate as an example. Let's say you do have a fourplex and it's worth $500,000, and you need it to produce $4,000 a month of income, and it's producing, or let's say you need to produce $3,500 income, it's producing $4,000. So it's meeting your income needs. That $500,000 property goes to $400,000 before it ever hits $600,000. You've never sold it. Right. You haven't lost anything. And other than a line item on your net assets or your net worth, it really doesn't change anything other than makes you uncomfortable in the moment.
Sure. That makes sense. Cool. Well, I think that's all I got for you today, Chad.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. We hope this episode has been inspiring and beneficial to you. If you want help on your journey to financial freedom, reach out to us at veritasalaska.com. We'd love to sit down over a cup of coffee with you, either here in our office or virtually, and get to know you and your needs. And though this podcast is free of charge, we do ask that you please do us 2 quick favors. If you enjoyed the episode, give our pod a great rating on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use, and also give us a follow on Instagram. We hope you have a wonderful day filled with gratitude and intentionality. God bless.
The information expressed is for general information only and is not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations for any individual. It is suggested that you consult your financial professional, attorney, or tax advisor with regard to your individual situation. Hypothetical investment results are for illustrative purposes only and should not be deemed a representation of future results.